Welcome to Season 2, Episode 6 of the Free Spirit Academy podcast with colon hydrotherapist and host of the Everyday Detox podcast, Mike Perrine. Free Spirit Academy is about you being fully you. My name is Randy Moss, and I'm an eating psychology coach and Kundalini yoga teacher, bringing you conversations about freedom. Largely from rigid diets and painful body image, but ultimately it's about the freedom to be yourself. This is about honoring our own bodies and our purest self-expression. Welcome to the podcast. I really loved this conversation. Sometimes it goes a few weeks between having a conversation with somebody and actually getting to share it. And as I was listening back to this, I was just so grateful that Mike and I were able to follow up our first conversation from Season 1 with everything that you're going to hear today. And if you haven't heard the first episode, it was called Being a Food Weirdo and Living on Purpose. That was Episode 7. I definitely suggest checking that one out as well. And whether you have or haven't, I just want to let you know Mike is more than just one of the many colon hydrotherapists I've spoken with here. He's also a detox and health counselor in the most real, least fluffy sense of that title. He's the founder of Vitality New York City, which offers gravity colon hydrotherapy, cryotherapy, and nutrition coaching, and host of one of my favorite podcasts. I never miss an episode, Everyday Detox. And in this episode, Mike beautifully lays out what constitutes a healthy food. There's a lot of confusion and information out there, especially when it comes to the word detox, and his clear teaching style is so needed. And it's something I see too a lot in the being very involved in the intuitive eating community. You know, people have gotten to a place where they're like, ugh, what even is healthy? And that doesn't mean anything. And we don't even want to use that word anymore. But it is a thing, and it is important. And when it comes to listening to our bodies are nature. And the closer that we get to nature in the way that we feed them, the more easy it's going to be to listen, the more clear the signals are going to be. It can get a little muddled the further away that we get from that. And it's not impossible. And I've talked about this on other episodes. Absolutely not. When I was first getting into intuitive eating, I was eating a lot more processed foods, a lot of stuff from my childhood. I've talked about this a bit before. And I had enough of an experience before that with cleansing my body and detox and eating natural whole foods that I knew what it was like to feel good. And so to go into eating, let's say, I don't know, a white flour something, blah, blah, blah. I could eat the thing and I could really enjoy it and appreciate it and love it and take it into my body and see what that experience is like. And over time, playing with this sort of thing, I could feel the difference between the way that I was feeling at that point, again, without judgment of this food being good or bad, and the way that I felt eating in a different way that was more whole foods based. This is all very big. And I think that there are maybe a lot of people who didn't have that, or whose version of dieting was a lot of processed diet foods, or just calorie counting or macro counting. And so to have no reference point to pull back to for what feeling good actually is, I think it can be really, really helpful to have somebody like Mike who is very clear and very able to say like, hey, this is what a healthy food is. And I'm not going to spell it out because he spells it out beautifully in this episode. Other topics that came up were thoughts on rewilding and biohacking, very popular topics. It's definitely on a lot of podcasts that I listen to. We talked about veganism, whether or not it's actually natural for humans. A lot on self-responsibility. We talked about body confidence. In body confidence that can be so, and I mean the health and cleansing world. So body confidence in the health and cleansing world that can be so hyper-focused on a particular aesthetic, like you feel confident if you look a certain way, or we feel like we're doing a good job if we've reached this certain weight. And so we talked about confidence that doesn't hinge on that and the various ways that the body can shift. And pursuing health with a sense of ease and excitement rather than a force and a push and having to use all of our willpower to be good. So this conversation is really a gem. I hope that it is very useful, and please enjoy. we spoke, you said something that I kind of want to dive into this time around. And it's kind of unfair because you sort of spit it out in response to one of my questions and you're like, I don't really know how to explain that. And now I'm going to be like, hey, explain this. You said, you said, having a spiritual belief that I'm guided to certain things with intention has helped me a lot. And it helps a lot with the physical food stuff. So where does that hit you now? Like, is it that having gotten into cleansing sort of opened up the potential for your spiritual growth, or was it the other way around? Like, where does this hit you now?
Well, it was a little bit mixed. I mean, when I started taking steps towards positivity, a lot of things rushed in for me. So I always use this analogy because I don't know if some people know this, if they kind of know my thing or heard me on, different things on my podcast or whatever. But I got into all this from reading the Autobiography of Malcolm X. Mm-hmm. So I was like kind of living in a really dark place as a teenager, just making bad decisions, way deep into alcohol culture, destroying my body, doing that to quell anxiety. So it was just like this bad cycle I was in. I won't go into that backstory. But one day I picked up the Autobiography of Malcolm X, and it really moved me. I have no idea why I was initially attracted to this book. It was the original printing. It was like this, it was falling apart. It was like, I think it was published in the 60s. And I was like, I'm going to read this book. And I started reading it. And part of reading about Malcolm X's life, there was this really interesting thing about, he had converted to Islam. And I have no connection to Islam or wanting to be Muslim or anything like that. But, I was connected to his story. And it said in there that what they would say, and they probably still do say, is that when you take one step towards Allah, Allah will take two steps toward you. Mm-hmm. And like, that was kind of part of his thing. Like he got into, which was for him at the time, a very positive thing of self-responsibility, trust in God, whatever that looks like for individuals. But for him, it was in Islam. And what he was able to do from taking those steps towards positivity was incredible. Like it all rushed in, all the support that he needed kind of rushed in for him to better his life. And of course, the story of that got very complicated and kind of imploded at the end with the organized religion part. But his intentions led him to a place to better himself. And I found that to be very true. Like when I stopped drinking and smoking and dabbling in other things and started eating better, immediately all the right things started to show up and come toward me to support that. Mm-hmm. And it changed my perspective on how I wanted to show up in the world. And actually, I don't even think it changed it because I was always a good soul. I was just very misguided and confused as a young person. Not as a kid, but as a teenager. So it helped to clarify suddenly a lot of those things. It helped to bring forth what was already in me. It's one of the reasons I think, and I've talked to Dr. Fred Bishey about this, who's a very spiritual person, and his fasting and cleansing is all about spirituality. It's that, fasting and prayer are mentioned in the Bible like 52 times. I know they're part of Islam, and I think it's part of certain Jewish traditions. And these all have various forms, but there's a reason that physical cleansing invites spiritual energy. I don't know what the reason is, but but it definitely does. You see it historically in the spiritual past. You see it in yoga. There's all sorts of cleansing that happens in yoga, and yoga is really a spiritual path, even though a lot of us use it for aerobics and stretching and stuff like that.
It's really interesting that you're talking about like bettering yourself. And I'm sitting here taking this in and thinking about all of the, like, I've seen a lot of self-help stuff that's really destructive. And I was sitting here trying to think of like what the difference is, because I hear it in you and it's very, very different the way you're explaining, even just like positivity. And I think it's that some people can use, and I am speaking for myself too, in the past have used positivity and bettering ourselves as just, it's like a self-worth thing. Like I need to be able to keep up with this thing so that I feel like I'm good, versus what you're talking about. And not versus, I think what you're saying is not versus. It's like a more matured version of this. It's becoming better is just causing less harm. Like everything that you described, you're no longer putting drugs into your body, you're no longer killing animals and all of these things. Like you're causing less harm to yourself, you're causing less harm to the earth and everybody that lives on the earth by extension. And I wonder if is that what we're talking about when we're talking about just self-betterment? We're no longer causing harm by our existence.
I guess we all have a different definition for what it can be because we all have a different life purpose. But But yeah, like I always looked at like cleansing and veganism as a spiritual opportunity, because it's not a natural way to live. If we live like, you know, Amazonian tribes people somewhere, or Aborigines, or if we were part of like some real indigenous people and we were not part of the evolved civilization we're a part of now that lives on farming and all that stuff, we wouldn't even be able to eat this way. So now that like the human mind has been like, oh, we can control land and we can create farms and we can get our calorie sources not from animals, we could try this vegan thing, which is a very new experiment, and it seems to be working for many people, not everyone, or can be, at least is working, can be working to a large percentage in someone's diet. Like we can create a lot less suffering. And since we're contemplative beings that have histories of religion and spiritual practices, and we have contemplated our own existence and the fact that things suffer and we suffer, and you know, like we can then go, oh wait, I can contribute less to the world of suffering now. It's like, you know, it's just like a tool. It's like an opportunity that we can kind of do that.
Right. You were actually the first. Oh, I'm sorry. Which?
Oh no, I don't know. I was actually going to say I forgot what you initially asked me. I went off on a tangent about that. Yeah.
No, you were actually the first person ever on maybe one of the Beck's podcasts that said, you know, veganism is not necessarily our natural diet or where we've come from, but it is this opportunity for spiritual growth or evolution. And it was like this, oh my God, because what I had been hearing, I felt like, or maybe this was just my interpretation from those in the cleansing world, and certainly from those in a lot of the vegan circles, was just that veganism is our natural state. We need to get back to veganism. But then of course you have all the paleo people saying going back to paleo. But I mean, studies have shown, right, that we don't have long-lived peoples that have subsisted on veganism. This is new, but that doesn't make it like we're not going backwards. We are evolving.
Yes. And I mean, you know, to think about, just to take a little detour, like we'll go back, like to get away from the spiritual stuff for a second, just even if we think about digestive organs, and I know we talk about all this all the time, so I'll be really quick on this part, but like just to get a perspective, like our digestive organs are designed like other primates. So when people say like we're vegans, like there's really no vegan primates, because they eat like 90% vegan. You'll even see gorillas and chimps and all these animals. They'll be chewing on leaves and roots and bark, and they'll eat some fruits when in season, wherever you know, whatever type of primate we're talking about, wherever they are in the world. And then they also eat, and humans don't like to think about this. It's not part of our culture unless you're part of like a Southeast Asian culture or something. But they eat insects.
Right.
You know, they do eat insects. They eat small mammals. You know, so like even our relatives are not really purely vegan. And we're not either. And you don't find all that nutrition in nature that you need all the time. Farming lets us, because we can take the best of the best, and we got these ultra sweet fruits and things not in season, and we freeze them, and we're shipping bananas all over the place. And like, so like, you know, now we can do it, but we can never do that. So when people are trying to figure out what to eat or what a real diet is, you just got to look at the set of digestive organs that we've evolved from, because they haven't really changed. I mean, of course, there's different. If you talk to a specialist, I'm sure there's differences in an ape and a human in their digestive anatomy, but I think it's slight. And if you look and you want to model the diet of that person, but we don't eat that way. You know what I mean? So anyway, so back to the talk so we're in this opportunity now. Like we control things. We built New York City, we built Los Angeles and Seattle, and we built airplanes because of farming, because we control our environment now. Mm-hmm. So part of that control has been a real mess. We've created a lot of pollution. You know, we've created a lot of problems. New York City, God, you look at it from the Google Maps, it's like a giant cancer sitting on the East Coast. I mean, it's just this big gray area. So, you know, some of it's gotten us into trouble, but the other part of it is it's given us a lot of opportunity now. Like we can do amazing things. Like, you know, we don't have to run around and hunt and gather and depend on the seasons and droughts and all that kind of stuff. Like we control things, you know, and we can sustain ourselves that way.
And I love how nuanced of an approach that is, because I think it's very common to take this all in and be like, well, you know, we've taken too much control and, you know, we've created New York City and look at this cancer, like humans are just a cancer on the earth. So let's all go backwards. Let's all go back to nature. 100%. This is all evil. And you're saying like, hey, no, let's be discerning. Like, let's actually look at what is useful and supportive to our evolution and, you know, the great majority that isn't. And I think that's a more challenging thing to do.
Yeah. Well, we have no choice, right? It's like, we don't like, I mean, like we're kind of touching on it now. Like you see like the circles we run in, the things people talk about, the stuff talked about on podcasts, people talk about like rewilding. Mm-hmm. If you go on Instagram, the foraging accounts are huge, you know, like people love that. So like getting back to more natural living is there, but I think we've gone way too far. Like, I don't think we're ever gonna stop the system that we're in right now. We just have to evolve and adapt to it. It's not like everyone's going to like go back to going off the grid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the allure is there. I think that like the temptation's there. People are intrigued by it. People want it. People crave it. I hear people coming in and out of the office talking about their vacations. They love going to certain places because they're so isolated and there's no cell service. So I think like we want it, but I don't think it's going anywhere. I sometimes, I get into conversations with people about reusing bags and plastic and stuff like that. And I'm like, I personally don't think that not using my bag at the supermarket or bringing a bag and not taking a plastic bag at the supermarket is the answer. I think it makes a very small difference, which is important. But I think humanity's never going to stop using plastic bags or plastic. So what we got to do is change what it is. Like, we're going to have to technologically get ourselves out of it. Like, we're going to have to change over to soy, corn, whatever it is, some biodegradable thing. But I don't think disposable society is going to go anywhere.
What else do you see now that we're talking about this? So if we're not just rewilding and going back to nature and scrapping all of this, like, what sort of vision do you have for the human body, for the earth, for sustainable living?
Well, I just think we're getting smarter to it. It's really funny because like I talked to Chris Hall about this on the Raw Foot Soldier podcast, and I didn't have a very positive outlook on it because I think that and I think it's very first world of us to see things changing. Like, I remember back in the day when Whole Foods first came out, and like my friends and I were like, wow, it's going to be like a vegan organic wonderland. We have supermarkets now. The world's changing. And then you see, like, in the first world, we're evolving into caring more about organics, caring more about health stuff, getting into cool shit like Wim Hof breathing and cold submersion, and the infrared saunas have blown up now. And we're like, people are thinking more, right? So it's very cool. But then you look at what's going on in a lot of the non-first world places, and it's oceans of garbage. And it's just like, if we take a look at it and just step back, I mean, we're still doing a lot of destructive behavior. We got Fukushima just dumping radiation. Still, I think to this day, I don't think that they finished cooling that thing. Like, people were all anxious about it the first 2 months that it was going on. I don't think it stopped. It hasn't stopped. And I'm not trying to be all down on this, but I'm just saying, there's
a big picture. You have to look at everything.
Yeah, there's a lot of shit and pollution going on around us. So I don't know. So I think we're going to have to get our brilliant minds, our Elon Musk and these type of people to really think a way through this, because species are dying rapidly, planets warming rapidly, toxicity is increasing rapidly. So it's cool that a lot of us in the first world are getting really smart to this, and hopefully we can lead the world. But there's still a lot of work to be done, is what I'm saying. So I don't really have a vision of where we're going. I don't think we're going into a utopia anytime soon. But I'll
honestly, add. You'll add to that.
I was just gonna say I'll add, because I just said a bunch of negative shit, and I hate doing that. But I'll add to that, Dr. Bushy, we've had conversations about spirituality a lot. And he said to me once, he said, he goes, a lot of people get it confused. He goes, this is meant to be a fallen world. We live in a fallen world. It's where things go wrong. It's so that we can grow and grow through it. And, he's like, that's the way it's meant to be. Like, we're never going to really fix the world. It's very unlikely we're going to create a paradise on earth, because that's not where paradise exists. This is the big classroom where things get turned up. So it's a catalyst for growth for us spiritually, and that's why humanity has all the problems. And look, we have internal conflicts built within each other. Men and women are different. We have all these things that we have these things, like we communicate differently. We have these things built into us, these conflicts of personality, emotions, and everybody's at a different stage in growth, emotional growth at different stages of their life. Like, look at how teenagers act versus people in their 30s. So it's set up perfectly for conflict and growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I was going to say, though, too, because you were like, all this negative stuff, I really think that's how we start, because it could be very easy to sort of tune it out and be like, there's a lot of bad stuff. Let's not look at that. Let's be really, really positive. But I think in order to make any progress, it's a sort of pulling back and seeing like, whoa, this is the big picture. This is what's happening, and settling in and being like, okay, what practically can we actually do with this?
Right. And what's my contribution? So I don't usually go into that dark place. I'm all about the PMA. For my daily life, I always try to manage my mindset all the time. It's like the big Tony Robbins thing, positive mental attitude.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm like all about that, but I get where I am.
But I mean, positive mental attitude isn't ignoring anything, right? Like it's seeing what's there. And then the positive part is like, okay, I see this and I see that they're suffering and I can do something about it, even if I don't quite know what that is yet.
Right.
I guess I don't see that as negative necessarily. Like it would be negative if you're like, the world is shit and people are shit and we can't do anything about it. And, it's a fallen world and we're just meant to suffer. Life is suffering, the end. But it's like life is suffering and.
And, I guess it depends on, sorry, I got lost in what you just said there.
Oh, no. I guess I'm saying the difference between I don't think that what you're saying is not positive mental attitude. Like to look at what's happening is not negative. What's happening is negative, but that doesn't mean we can't look at it.
Right. It's a tool for us to work with. That's all it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to scroll back a little bit now that you're talking about positive mental attitude and growth and personal growth and spiritual growth. Somebody said to me recently, and I feel like I had heard this before, but I don't know where it comes from. They said, food isn't the most important thing, but food is the first thing. Do you agree with that as far as like all of the growth that you've done? I mean, everything from just pulling yourself out, not just, good Lord, but everything from pulling yourself from drug addiction and being very unhealthy and overweight and in pain, all the way to, running your own business in New York City and thriving as much as one can in New York City, I'm sure. Do you feel like food and cleansing is the foundation for that? Do you feel like all of that would have been possible for you in your journey without that piece first?
No, it wouldn't have been possible for me because that's what my thing is, though. That's what turned me on and lit me up. The first thing for me was self-responsibility. That's what led me into the food thing. So it was really taking responsibility for the fact that I was creating a lot of my world, and I got that from Malcolm X. It was he basically had to take responsibility for his life, and when he did, everything changed for him. And I was like, wow. I was like, you're a very privileged young man, and you're in America, and you're in New York City, and you're throwing your life away. Like people would kill for that life, So I took responsibility for what I had, and I wanted to create something amazing with it. And part of the steps of that was the food stuff, and the food stuff helped so much. Mm-hmm. It helped so much.
Do you think it is for everybody? Do you think it's a requirement to eat a certain way to be able to have a certain spiritual connection or to feel purposeful? Or because you said, this was my thing. Do you feel like it's not necessarily everybody's thing?
Yeah, I don't think it's everybody's thing. Everybody has a different contribution in the world, I watch, interestingly enough, if you see all the stuff I'm into or look at my Instagram page, you wouldn't think that I'm really into MMA, but I am. So, I watch a lot of these fighters and you listen to their story.
Oh, this is wrestling. I was pausing. I was like, okay, catch up. What's happening? Is this wrestling?
No, this is not wrestling. This is, it's mixed martial arts. So, it's not like that world, what is it? WWF, it's not jumping off the ropes.
I'm like, okay, there's letters and there's fighting. I'm going to put this together. Okay. Mixed martial arts.
Let's be very clear. I don't have time to watch wrestling.
Okay. All right. I'm glad I asked.
Yeah, nor would I. But no, mixed martial arts, I do like to catch some of these fights. It's basically evolved boxing. It's a little more brutal, but it requires a lot of skill. And I watch a lot of these guys go through their path and they're not vegan. They're not into cleansing. Some of them are actually into really cool health stuff and technologies, but they're not into that stuff. But their training is what's been really important for them in creating a better life for them. Because a lot of them come from rough places. They come from rough places and they could have just been getting in trouble and being thuggish, but instead they got down the path of mixed martial arts and training and that type of health stuff. So, are they vegan? Are they into cleansing? Do they do fast? I doubt they do colonics. No, they don't do any of that stuff. But it's really helped them spiritually, Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But Mike Tyson, I know you don't. I can tell you don't connect to any of this stuff. But Mike
the overall, the overall of what you're talking about. It's just the specifics that I'm like, I don't. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say Mike Tyson's a great example of one. He's one of the greatest boxers that ever lived. But he was a volatile, rough guy, and if he didn't have that coach that he had, he probably would have had a life of a lot of trouble if he didn't have people putting him in the right direction, because he already had a life of a lot of trouble while he was getting influenced the right way. So, So those types of things, those types of disciplines could be really great for someone. And food is just another part of it or another one. So, so yes, I don't necessarily think food comes first, but I'll tell you, food is a very powerful tool. Food, and we're talking about personal development stuff. Food's really, and I realized this once because I've done a lot of personal development work and seminars and things like that. And I would watch people at these events and I'd be participating with them when we do like group exercises, and people would like always be, they would really like, we'd be doing, I'm like just pulling this out of thin air, like, but we'd be doing some type of exercise to like get us connected to the truth of what we really want to be in the world, right? Like we've done a lot of stuff like that. So whatever the exercise was, people would want to be more, people would be like, I want to be more loving. I am love. I am this. And they'd have all these lofty things that they want to be more of, right? Because we all know what it is. But once you do the process, it really gets clear and it comes up. And then lunchtime would come and there are all these amazing souls and we're all hugging and some people are crying and we've done stuff. Okay, and then there's lunchtime and everyone goes off out of the convention center and people go, I'm watching like half the group and there's like 1,000 people there. Half of them go across to McDonald's. And I was like, wow, it's really interesting, right? So, food is really about how we show up in the world. It's how we spend our money and it's what we create because we do it 3 times a day plus snacks. When you do affirmations and all this stuff and you pray, like I think we eat more than we pray, more than we do our affirmations, more than we, do our notebooks and like do all the personal development stuff. So like, that's really our dance with life. So like if we're throwing money into a company that just creates pollution and tortures animals and destroys our bodies, well, that's really what you're doing. Right? That's what you're creating in the physical world. Like that's originating from us because we're taking part in that system. So it's interesting. Like we have these ideas of what we want to be, but food is really what we are. Like that's like a lot of what we do in the world.
It's true. And it's interesting. So many of these little pieces sort of talking about, how food is not everybody's thing, or maybe it's not just everybody's next step. Because I'm thinking about how I was into cleansing and colonics and juicing and salads and the whole thing for a lot of years before I connected with veganism. And there was this part of me that kept feeling like I should, and I would look at the stuff and be like, well, obviously I should feel something. And I didn't feel much. And I was still eating cheese and fish and some meat once in a while and just not really feeling much about it. But then, I was taking my next steps. Those little, like when something lights up for you, like when the Malcolm X book just sort of lights up for you, you don't know why, you just take that next step and you go into that next thing. And at some point it was like, oh my God, I don't think I can eat this. I can't eat this fish anymore. And it was no longer any judgment on myself or anybody else. It was just, oh, this is so obviously something that I can no longer do. And I gave myself the wiggle room. I'm like, is something weird happening here? Like I can sure still have it if I want to. And it, much time went by and I just didn't want to. It was my natural next step. And I'm wondering if with that, we can talk about this idea of hacking and how everybody's always wanting to like get to a certain place and push to a certain ideal and use all of, find the one thing that's going to get them to their final destination, when really it's steadiness and consistency and staying on your path and doing what works for you.
Yeah, that's what I just did my Insta story on. And it's so frustrating being a practitioner that's been into this for like 25 years now.
Right, I'm sure you've seen so many things come and go.
I just see some dude that's had a podcast for the last year, and then all of a sudden they're like, this is the Biohacking podcast. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what are we doing here now? So I'll watch it out of curiosity or I'll listen to it. So I'm like, oh, and it's just the silliness.
Like they went from something that wasn't biohacking to now it's biohacking?
Yeah, like intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
Like it's been around. Dr. Bishy taught us about, somebody taught Dr. Bishy about that like 30, 40 years ago,
Yeah, it just didn't have the fancy name or the popularity.
Right. Now it's a thing. Now it's a hashtag. The cool thing is people are into it. Totally. So, we create all these little things. But you were asking about, what was your question about biohacking?
Like, what do you see? And do you so you've got people coming into your colonic place and they're into all sorts of different things. Are you seeing people trying to shortcut their way to certain places and sort of falling on their face? Or like, how often do you see somebody actually getting to be steady? And what's the difference that you see between somebody who's just trying to hack and fix and do the next hot thing versus somebody who's just like, you know what, the juicing works. And so I'm just going to be somebody who juices until they take their next step.
Yeah, very few people actually get consistent on it. Most people have a lifelong food drama. They do. And there's a number of reasons why. One is most of the food we were raised on, it has a drug-like effect on us because it's not real food. And a lot of this has to do with the refined stuff. So this has to do with the cupcakes and the cookies and the croissants and the pastas. And like, that's the stuff. Most people lose their shit over that. Most people don't lose their shit over an avocado salad. You know what I mean? It's like they might have a craving for it. They eat it and then they go, oh, that was so good. But that's the end of it, where people uncontrollably eat, potato chips or whatever it is. Right. The other thing is so there's that reward system that needs to get broken and it can't be reignited. So, a lot of people think that my diet must be so like restrictive and I must be like starving all the time. It's like, if I wanted pizza all the time, I wouldn't be able to do this. Like I wouldn't like set myself up for this life of desire and never unfulfilled desire, No, like that's not there because I broke it. It's gone. It's like, well, I used to smoke cigarettes and for a couple of years after I quit, I would still kind of like want a cigarette or something. Like I haven't had a thought about a cigarette in like 20 years now, because it's broken, it's like, so we got to break these things. And part of that is the microbiome. So the beneficial bacteria that lives in the intestine, it controls our hormonal system. It tells us what it wants to eat and it makes us crave it. Anybody with a candida overgrowth knows it when they start craving sugars. But that could also not be a yeast issue. And that could just be the biome being, biome is like a farm. It's an ecosystem and it lives in relationship to the food that's available. And those are the type of bacteria and the levels and colonies exist based on what the body usually sees. Right. And that, the large intestine is almost always full. Even when we've moved our bowels, there's always a little residue and we're eating all the time. I know we fast and cleanse, but people are not doing that most of the time. So there's always some type of residue in the intestine feeding the microbiome, and whatever that residue is, the microbiome becomes accustomed to, and it's in relationship to that. So it's going to crave for more of that. I was thinking about this last night. I was eating a big raw salad and I was like so satisfied. And I was looking at some of the questions that had come in on my Insta story for the Q&A. Yeah. And I was like, oh man, it's all about this microbiome. Like, because some people thought in one of the clips I was doing on my Insta story that I was going to say that in the first few years of being vegan, it was hard for me to eat salads. And I didn't say that, but they were like, oh, I thought that's what you were about to say because it is for me. And I'm like, wow, I like crave this at the end of the day. And I do that because of repetition and because my body wants that, because that's what I've reared the bacteria and grown the bacteria in my intestine to be about. So it changes my whole relationship with food.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because those questions coming up obviously speak to like, this is the only experience a lot of people have had is this intense craving and this intense, like, I just have to willpower my way and then you fall apart. And so they must assume like this is the only experience available and he just must have more willpower.
Exactly. They do. They think it's about willpower and it's so incorrect. And that's the thing, because I would love for you to come on my podcast. My podcast is I like to do it in person, although I might have to change that as I'm moving to Ashland, because it's going to be a little harder to get guests.
Well, that's really close to me. I mean, we could make that happen.
I know that, and you and I can make that happen. I've actually mapped out the distance between your town and my town.
Really? How far is it?
I don't recall, but it's just a nice drive or a quick flight. It's not like, it's not New York to the West Coast. So.
Right, whatever it is, it's doable.
But I wanted to talk to you about this because I know that you talk a lot about emotional eating, and I work with a lot of people on emotional eating, and one of the things that, I understand it to a degree, but part of the process for me with food, like I had food addiction too. I grew up on pizza. I used to eat McDonald's. I used to drink a lot of alcohol, cigarettes. Like I have an indulgent, addictive tendencies, right? So I get it in that sense, but when I started eating clean, it was like a giant celebration of enthusiasm for me. I'm like, wait, what? We can do this? What's a goji berry? Holy shit! There's something called a quinoa. Like when all this stuff was new and it came out, I was like, wow. Oh my God, wait, you can get coconut meat that's already taken out of the shell and make these creamy smoothies. Oh, what if you put an essential oil drop in there? And now it's like an orange creamsicle. And I also worked as a chef. Like I loved food. I loved food culture. I loved all this new shit. There was never any oh God, I wish I could have a blah, blah, blah. I was just like, I'll recreate it with all this other stuff. And it was so much fun for me. So, when I hear people like, oh, I hate salad or I hate whatever, I'm like, how? I'm like, how? So I'm like trying to work with someone through it. And the correct answer when someone comes in with constipation or weight issues, or they need to cleanse for whatever reason, like their client or a friend or whatever, the correct answer is always just do the thing. Water, juice, salad, plants, organic. Like it's always the same. It's never changed. I mean, so like I tell them that, and then they're looking at me like, wait, I got to do all that. And it's like, I got nothing else for you. Like I you know, it's like, I'm not going to tell you to take chlorella or an enzyme or like, yeah, that stuff's all good, but like, you got to do all this other stuff. And they look so disappointed sometimes because, and you know, it's one of the reasons why I suck so bad financially in the wellness industry. Because I got nothing to sell other than common sense.
Right.
You know,
it's hard because I feel like it's your experience that was different. I think the majority's experience is to take that in, and for a lot of people, it's just like people aren't having a what? Oh my God, what is quinoa moment? There's like, oh, I have to be good now.
Yeah.
And we're so stuck in this mentality of being good versus being bad. It's very black and white. It's very small, and there's so much self-worth tied up in it. And like you're talking about how, you know, you cleaned your microbiome and you were having a totally different experience of food. My experience was very different. I was kind of obsessed with food since I was a tiny child. And when I, you know, even super far along the cleansing path, I could still binge on carrots, just like pounds and pounds of carrots, anything to chew. Like if I was going to escape, it's food, regardless of what that food is. And even if I was no longer craving bread or muffins, like that feels so far away, there was still like, you know, even when I was juice feasting, that in a way was kind of like a binge, because I could spend 3 months completely checked out and slamming jar after jar after jar of juice and feeling so good about myself because I'm doing this thing, because I'm sticking to the plan and I'm being good and I'm just having juice. But then once I come off of that, there's been no growth whatsoever. I haven't been embodied in the thing whatsoever. I've essentially just been binging, checked out, and stuffing my face. And I still go back to eating pounds and pounds and pounds of food. And there's so much wrapped up in childhood stuff and self-worth stuff and beliefs about myself. And this is true for all of the people that I work with. So I'm more fascinated with your experience, that this was just this whole new world. I was thinking about when you were going on about your, like, you know, oh my God, what is quinoa? I pull quotes, right? Like quotes from the podcasts. And I'm like, hey, this person is coming up. Here's a thing they said from the podcast. And I want this whole rant of like, what is quinoa? And I can put this in my this. And it was beautiful. But I don't think that that's the experience that most people have, especially because I think the health thing for a lot of people is just, it's another way of having to discipline myself or be good when I don't just feel good on my own. And maybe it's because you started out with the, I don't know, there was this lighting up of taking self-responsibility. Like that was your first spot. So I don't know, I'm fascinated with your journey.
Yeah, well, self-responsibility is huge. Like, you know, I had to travel around a lot the last couple of weeks. And like, here I am in Boston. I didn't have a car because I was staying right next to where I had to be. So I had to find food, you know what I mean? And like, and it was just like, I had to be self-responsible about it, where I see a lot of clients and people, they always say like, I've been doing the thing you told me to do the last few weeks, eating salads and all this stuff, but I'm going on a cruise and like, I don't know what they're going to have there. And immediately they give over the responsibility of what their food situation is going to be to whoever's preparing it. Yeah. Like I had somebody ask me once, they were like, I'm going to this birthday party and it's being catered. Like, what should I eat? And I was like, first of all, why do you think I know what the caterer has in mind for a menu? I have no idea. I don't know your friend or the place. I was like, but I was like, you know, if you don't think the food's going to be there, the only way that's ever going to work is if you bring the food. And people have a hard time with that. Like, you know, it's just priorities though. And it's funny, like people always like, I ain't got time for that. I have kids. I got the thing with the job and the commute and the blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, but when we get into talking and we drop away the nutrition talk, the person will tell me about all the other stuff they're doing. And they just didn't prioritize making sure that they had healthy food in their life because they had plenty of time or money to do the other stuff that they needed to do.
Right.
You know, so it's just a priority.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder too, I always want to know what's underneath it for people. Like, why are they asking this in the first place? Why are they asking you, what should I eat? Like, is it that they're trying to lose weight? Is it that they're trying, okay, let's say it's that they're trying to lose weight. Well, what's under that weight loss piece? Why do they want to lose weight? What do they think they're going to get once the weight is lost? And it's very often people are sort of withholding what they think they're going to have or experience or be or do for the weight loss. Like, one day I'm going to lose weight and everything's going to be perfect. And then I'll be free and I'll be beautiful and I'll be responsible and then I'll be all of these things. And we have a very hard time feeling worthy enough to bring all of those things into our experience now and take a journey that has freedom and self-responsibility. Like, there's so many things that we believe about ourselves that we can't, we don't know that we can bring those things into the journey. We think it's the before and after story. Like, once I get there, then I'll be and do all of these things. So somebody just tell me how to get there.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's also interesting. Do you know who Wim Hof is?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So Wim Hof, he does the cold immersion and the breathing and stuff like that. I'm amazed. Like, it's just an observation of people. And I'm like, he could be like, hey guys, fly over to the Netherlands and let's jump into frozen lakes and do breathing stuff. And everyone's like, yeah. And then I'm like, juice every day. And people are like, what? I don't got time for that shit. So it's like the willingness is so crazy that, like, I look at people and I'm like, wow, everyone's doing all this amazing shit until you tell them to eat better. And then they get all triggered and challenged and come up with excuses. And it's I
think that it's much easier to just like jump in and do the crazy thing. And I think this is why biohacking is partly so appealing. Like, yeah, I'm just going to go for it and I'm just going to do it. And I'm going to take all this crazy stuff and go to all this crazy stuff. But like that change, like if breakfast maybe is a very emotional thing every day, but we don't necessarily know that. We're just showing up for breakfast. But when you think about having to swap that for a juice, what comes up? Like, what is it going to be really sad to not have your bacon and eggs every day? Like, what do you think you're going to be missing out on? I think there's just so much tied up in it for people. And I'm curious for you, because like I hear you talk about this stuff and I hear Gil talk about this stuff, and it's very matter of fact. It's very like, well, you just do the thing. And for so many of us, like we just couldn't do the thing. And I wonder, do you see much of a difference between men and women? I find women's processes to be a lot more emotional most of the time. That's not always true. And men tend to be a little more like, yeah, we just do the thing. What have you found in that regard?
Absolutely. Women tend to have more food drama than men do. But men have it too. There is a percentage of men that do. Women have a lot more food drama because of changing bodies as they age and have children. Women tend to hold 6 to 11% more body fat than men, and they care about it, which I think is a big error. One of the most boring conversations to ever have, and something that it leaves me not feeling well, is when women come into the office, because look, we're in New York City. There's a lot of, colonics are luxury and disaster management experience for a lot of people. So, women will come in
luxury
and
disaster management. Yes. Okay.
I've had women just like very casually say things to me, like, after a treatment, and be like, let me ask you a question. Look at my knees. Do my knees look fat? And I'm just like, what? I'm like, what are we talking? I'm like, do I really got to do this? Do I got to have this conversation?
It's so funny. And I don't know if there's I feel like a fairly conventionally stereotypical feminine woman. But I'm also married to a woman, and I feel like I'm in a sort of different space. And we were watching this comedy special the other day that felt very like mainstream woman, and it felt like peeking into this world of what? It's stuff just like that. Like, do my knees look fat? Do people really, do we do this? Is this what we are concerned about? And that's not to be diminishing and not to say it's just a really interesting thing that's a legitimate concern, or it feels legitimement.
Yeah. And look, we should want to create cool bodies. And I think body sculpting is cool. I think it's great. I think, resistance training and weight training. And I think it's dope. I think it's so cool. I struggle with because I work so much, I struggle with getting my exercise routine regular. So I think it's cool for us to do this stuff. I think it's cool for us to not want to be holding excess weight. But what you really see more times than not, is that people are holding themselves to an ideal in their mind, and it doesn't really reflect the reality of what their body needs. It reflects something that they think it should look like, and it's turned out to be very unfortunate sometimes, because instead of there's no trust. They're not trusting their body to do the right thing. They're actually at war with it. And I've said that to certain women. I've said, look, I'm not going to take part in this war against your body. I was like, that's between you and your body. I was like, I think you look fine. I don't see, you know, they're not looking overly toxic. I mean, look, some people are holding weight and it's all wrong. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, they're on the, you know, Twinkies, Slurpees diet, and, you know, their body's falling apart. Like, that's a whole other story. But when people start obsessing over the fact that, like, you know, they had a couple of kids and they're 40 now, and, you know, fine, work out, eat clean, but they're like, I've been doing that, but I just can't seem to I just want another 5 pounds. And it's just like, we can't obsess on that. You just got to be consistent and trust your body. And yes, you could work out hard, do whatever you got to do. You know, but you don't need to like stress out about it and do like binge cleanses all the time because you're trying to take that 5 pounds off, as if that 5 pounds is going to do something for you.
Exactly.
You know?
That's the thing, is what do you think that 5 pounds is going to do to your experience? What are you expecting to get when that 5 pounds is gone? Like, we're still going to be just as unsettled if we think everything is hinging on that 5 pounds. So say you do lose the 5 pounds in a desperate juice cleanse or whatever, you're still going to feel that anxious sort of like, something's off here, because that wasn't it.
Yeah. It all depends on the approach. You know, someone's approaching a juice cleanse because they just want to engage in something positive for their body and give themselves a break. Cool. If they're doing it with this objective of like shaving off 5 pounds, we're starting to get into toxic behavior. And I don't really love being part of those kind of things.
Absolutely. And I think especially for women, part of that is sometimes they feel like they can trust their body and they get to a certain size, but our bodies change, like you were talking about in childbirth, and we grow, and hormones and things fluctuate. And part of that trust is allowing for flow. It's letting go of a little bit of control of, I believe my body needs to look this certain magazine cover way for my entire life. That's not healthy in any way.
Yeah. And ethnically, we have different bodies too.
Yeah.
You see it. You see, like, if I, you know, and I'm generalizing here, of course, but like, you'll see a lot of people in Southeast Asia, like some of the women are very thin, just naturally. And then you see people from Europe and parts of Africa where their bodies are they're just bigger. They just hold weight differently just based on their genetics. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, there's a reason for that. I don't know all the reasons. I don't specialize in hormones and stuff, but obviously there's a reason for that, because I've seen vegan raw food women that just can't lose all the weight that they want to lose. And it's because their body's genetically perfect.
Right. And I feel like it's important for people to hear somebody like you saying this, because I'm sure a lot of people and a lot of women look at you and think like, well, he's got this, you know, really pristine, beautiful detoxification lifestyle going on. And I'm sure he thinks that we all need to be living up to this certain standard. And to hear you say like, no, like, look, this is the way that things are, I think is just really important for people to hear.
Yeah. And nothing is more attractive than a person that's comfortable in their own body.
Yeah.
You know, and that goes for men and women. You know what I mean? Like, nothing's more attractive than that. You know, it's like, I have some friends that are like, and these are guys that are upset about their bodies, you know, because they're overweight, and like, you know, they work out all the time. They have some food issues and stuff, and like, they can't like get through it. And their whole life is about obsessing on their weight. And this is why I can't like land the right relationship, or like, this is what's holding me back. And like, you know, you're trying to be supportive, but like, these conversations are just weighing you down. And then I got friends that are overweight, and they're just like, this is me, and I drink every day, you know, right. and they're the life of the party, and they have beautiful relationships and wives and children, and like, they just got on with their life, and they're like, yeah, I'm not gonna fuck around all the time. I drink. I like to eat hot dogs. I go to the baseball game. Like, this is great. And their being says something totally different. Like, there's no sadness to it. There's no inherent sadness, or you know, they trust. They trust what their life's about.
Yes. Oh, no, it's so beautiful to see that. And I think that speaks to your point too, that like, you know, just hopping on a cleansing lifestyle, it's not everybody's path. It's your path. And I've felt that way too. Like I went on and off the sort of detox thing for a lot of years, and I kept coming back because it's for me. And I just know that it's for me, and every step I take and every way that I lighten my body now, that has nothing to do with my self-worth or anything like that. It's just, I'm on my path. Everything is aligned. It feels right. And I think that's how it should feel. There should be this glow and this ease and this just taking your next step and continuing on. And I think what can happen is that we get so in pain about whatever we think the issue is, the weight or whatever, that we want out of it as quickly as possible. And so it's like, I think that's the just tell me what to do, or just give me the thing, or just fix it. And then it's going to be okay. And it's just next little steps.
You know, I was just reminded of something I used to tell people. It's like, is green juice good? Yeah, green juice is really good for just about anybody. But no one's ever going to say that Mother Teresa didn't, live her full potential as a spiritual being because she didn't drink green juice every day. It's a powerful tool. If it happens to show up in your life, which it is for lots of us in the first world, we should go towards it. It's a very wise move, but it might,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just to say, it might not be what someone else's life is about though.
I think if it's making you feel bad, I was having a conversation just on Facebook with somebody today about how they were trying to do this detox thing and it felt so heavy and it felt so isolated. And it was like, well, then that's not like that. You're pushing really, really hard. And that's not how this is supposed to be. Like you should feel more connected to your body and to your life and to other people and to everything around you. If you feel less so, and if this feels like a burden, then that's force. That's not the next step.
Yeah. Yeah. Then it's not for you right there. You got to be excited about whatever you do.
And speaking of excitement, you've been talking about, I'm going to tie it up with this, your broom cleanse. And this is kind of a funny little transition, but for somebody who is just looking for a little bit of structure and stability and lightness, and they feel like, oh yeah, that seems like it would be a really natural, easy next step. You've got something coming out.
Yeah, we have the Vitality Broom Cleanse. So I developed this cleanse because it's basically the most ideal way to set up for a colonic. And when we opened up Vitality, we had a whole new influx of clients that were not already immersed into the world of cleansing. And I wanted to give them a good way to set up for things, but I didn't want it to be like a juice cleanse or something super radical that they needed to do. Mm-hmm. So the Broom Cleanse, it's a series of juices, smoothies, and salads. So you're eating, but it's all specifically chosen ingredients based on the different enzyme, acid, and fiber profiles. So basically things that are going to help lock up and sweep waste out of the intestine and pull away from the body very easily. So someone doesn't have to be doing a colonic to do this cleanse, but they can do it anywhere from 1 to 3 days. And I give like all my recipes and everything so people can make it at home. And it's great. It's just amazing. People have the most incredible treatments. We just had a couple of people from the office that get colonics all the time. They said, hey, you know what? We're going to do the broom cleanse to a T. And they did it. And then they said, will you do the treatment? So I did the treatments on them. And oh, my God, it's night and day. It's just so much easier, so much stuff. It just loosens so much waste out of the body, and it makes such an easier treatment. And so that's where that came from. And it's just, I've been having a lot of fun with it. Finally refined the recipes. We're going to relaunch it. Some of the people hearing this may have had the old one. The old one works too. The old one works great too, but I kind of refined the recipes a little bit. So they're a little bit better. And there's some new photos and there's some new information. But it's a great thing. We're supposed to eat foods that, I always define what makes a food a health food, or how do you determine if a food's really going to serve the body or not? And it could be an ingredient, it could be a dish at a restaurant, whatever it is. And you look at it and you have to ask three things. It's three qualities. It's one, it's what a food delivers. That's what everything's written about. You know what I mean? That's what every Instagram post is about. Blueberries do this or that, so it's nutritional content. So of course we have access right now to the best food in the world. So, we want the food to have enough high nutrition, but that's like 10% of it. 90% of it is the other two parts. And one part is what a food removes. So it's food as a cleanser. So an apple a day keeps the doctor away because it makes you shit, not because of the vitamin C. The vitamin C, yes, but there's so many cofactors. Like we need all that stuff. But, so it's food as a cleanser, absorbing and sweeping waste away. And then the other side of that is what a food doesn't leave behind. So food shouldn't leave sludge behind. So the difference between an apple and a cheeseburger is an apple deposits its elements into you. It absorbs waste away from the intestine, and it doesn't leave anything stuck in your tissue. Mm-hmm. Where you could eat a cheeseburger and it'll deposit all sorts of things into you. It doesn't remove a thing, and it might leave part of itself behind in your body. So we all should have an 80% diet of cleansing foods like that. And the broom food ingredients are at the top of that.
Amazing. And people can get this on...
They can get it from our mailing list at vitalitynewyorkcity.com. Also on my Instagram page, once it's available, I'm going to put the link in the bio, and I'll be doing an Insta story about it. Probably doing posts about it for a while. And that's at Everyday Detox.
Amazing. Perfect. Thank you so much for this. You really are you're such a gift. I learn so much from you every time I listen to something from you and every time I talk to you. There's light bulb moments. This time, by the way, just so you know what it was the microbiome being like a little farm. I have such trouble. I've had such trouble when people ask about like gut health and the microbiome. I'm like, this isn't really my area of expertise, but that was just so beautifully explained. And I think that is one of your gifts, is that you've taken a lifestyle that can be maybe overcomplicated or fluffy, and you're just like, well, no, it's this, and you explain it so clearly. And so thank you so much.
Thank you for having me back on. I appreciate it so much.
My pleasure. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. For more on food and body freedom, get my free ebook, The Eat to Feel Good Diet, by signing up for newsletter updates at freespirit-academy.com. I will be back with you next week.